I'm ready.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. You're listening to Author's Corner, where we highlight and showcase our local authors. Today, I am speaking to Henry Bruneau, author of The Westside Riviera. And Henry and I are going to be talking on the topic Building Resilience from the Sea. Welcome, Henry.
Welcome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. So let me give you guys a brief synopsis of Riviera. From the sun-drenched shores of St. Lucia to the bustling streets of New York City, the Westside Riviera is a captivating memoir that charts an extraordinary life shaped by adventure, resilience, and the ever-changing tides of fortune. Henry Bruneau takes readers on a sweeping journey across the world. His childhood in the Caribbean, his daring escape to the sea, and the decades spent navigating both the waters of the Atlantic and the streets of Manhattan. With vivid storytelling, he recounts the vibrant community of West 79th Street Boat Basin, where he lived on the Hudson River, the grit of New York City's taxi trade, and the stark realities of life at sea. Brimming with humor, heartache, and the wisdom of a life well traveled, the West Side Riviera is not just a memoir, it's proof of the strength of the human spirit and the unbreakable bond to one's roots. Awesome. You know, St. Lucia is one of, I think I did go there on a cruise, but it's one of the islands that I've never actually went for a long visit. I was in St. Croix a couple years ago, but never St. Lucia. But I'm from the Caribbean as well, kind of the Caribbean. I'm from Guyana, which they say it's part of the Caribbean, but technically it's South America. But we consider ourselves part of the Caribbean. So, hey, so I'm talking to, a fellow traveler.
I have visited Georgetown, Guyana,
Yeah.
and Bourbis, where
Oh,
the
nice.
the marketing board is there.
Okay, very nice. Well, I'm from Georgetown, and of course, I've gone to
Okay.
Burpees too. So very
Yeah.
nice. So yeah, I gotta come visit
You
your
go
country
up the
next.
Demerara River to get to the marketing board.
Very nice,
So
very
that
nice.
part of my stories is I traveled there and we picked up rice and then delivered to the other Caribbean islands.
Very nice, very nice.
And your neighbor, Dutch Guiana,
Uh-huh.
to the north, and
Right.
French Guiana and Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
all of them were my regular ports of call.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Okay. Nice. All right. So great. I've also never been to Brazil or Suriname.
Yeah. Suriname is interesting,
Yeah.
and French Guiana is also interesting. And in my book, you'll see I write a lot about French Guiana
Okay.
because that's my ship was one of the ships that bring most of the material to build the European Space Station. That's in French Guiana, Kourou.
Okay. Very nice. All
So
right.
up and down, I traveled.
Up and down. Okay. So, huh. All right.
And not one time, several
Several
times.
times, right? Because you're on the sea. Very nice, very nice. So, as we start off, your book is a memoir of your journey. How would you describe your journey?
Uh, my journey, I'll take it, is resilience, resilience,
Right?
unconventional and deeply rooted in the tides of change.
Okay.
That's how I would recommend.
All right. So, okay, so you're going from a label, right? But okay, so that's great. So let's talk about you're saying one of the last things you said there is deeply rooted in change. And when I hear about the sea and things like that, the sea is always changing. The sea is always flowing, right?
Yeah.
So if I were to, have you talk about your journey from, St.
From
Lucia.
one country to
Right,
the
for
other.
another. Give me your take on your journey.
My take on my journey is practically every country that I visited was always the first time.
Mm,
The residents of these countries, since I was younger, they were very interesting people who take me around the country.
mm,
To the interior, just like I said, I went to Georgetown.
mhm.
It was Georgetown residents who took me around Georgetown.
Nice.
Going up to Burbis, that was where up the Demerara River, that's where the marketing board was, where the rice factory or distribution was.
Hmm.
We load up and leave. But before we got to Burbis, we spent a lot of time in Georgetown.
Okay. All right.
So every place I had visited, or three-quarter parts of the world, is I found it very interesting. And two, with the help of the various natives of these countries, showed me around. And that's why it became so interesting and I never forget.
Okay. Well, yeah, well, I get that. One of the things I said is that I think I've been to St. Lucia on a cruise. And a
Yeah.
cruise, you go there for a
Spent a
couple of
couple of
hours.
hours.
You can't really see the country very well, right?
No.
But yeah, one of the reasons that travel is so good for a person's soul and for their cultural experience is that when you go to different countries and you're able to soak in the culture, you're able to
Yes.
be there for a little while, and like you said,
Especially for the first time.
right, right. So the people, if I were to sum that up, you're saying that people were very nice, people were very hospitable, and people, embraced you and took you around.
Yeah.
So right, okay. So if I were to put a label on your journey, it was a journey of inclusive of people. You're not staying in one place. It's a really nice journey because you're
Yeah.
you're all over. So
And then I had a different experience than like you on a cruise ship, you spend a couple hours in port.
right.
With me, practically the type of ship I was on, I spent a week to maybe 2 weeks in port.
Oh,
So I saw the daylight awareness of the country
okay.
and the nightlife of the
Okay.
country
Yeah, that's very important.
out of the 2 weeks.
Okay. So
And
what
then I did that several times a year.
right.
So you
Okay, so we
get to
should
know.
back up a bit. What was your ship about? It sounds like you were in trade. Tell us
I
about your
was
ship.
in my ship, the ship, I work for a company that had about 12 ships, and I work about five of them. The ships we carried general cargo from fruits
Okay.
to 60 passengers. The 60 passengers would, in the evening, the wives had to dress up in their cocktail dresses and the men in their tuxedo suit to have dinner with the officers.
Okay.
And what I mean by the officers is the captain, the first mate, the second mate, the radio officer, the doctor, and the chief engineer. You understand? In the evening. And what happened, some places we carry not only fruits, but we carry trucks, cars,
Hmm.
hardware, maybe even arms
Okay.
and animals. Like, for example, we carried live animals, which in my book I wrote about it. We carried live animals from Colombia, Venezuela to Martinique and Guadeloupe and France. In that transition, you would see I mentioned in the book that remind me of the slave trade
Ah. Well,
because what
yeah,
happened,
but the slave trade, they were carrying people's
live cargo,
things. Right.
live people, and it took longer from from Africa
Right.
to the West Indies and America.
Right.
But with us, we took it from Venezuela and Colombia, and every 4 hours they would check on the animals,
Mm.
and some of them used to fall down in the barricade. And we had a cattle rod, an electric stick, and you stuck them to get up. If
Mm.
they didn't get up, you threw them aboard.
Board. Right. Okay.
You understand?
I now see the correlation to the slave trade because that's exactly how they held
Yes,
people.
that's why
Right.
I
Okay.
associated it and I
Okay.
wrote in my book about that.
Right. Right.
Then the next group area where I was sailing is from Europe to South Africa, especially when I first started going to South Africa, Cape Town. Robben's Island was where, what's his name?
Nelson Mandela. Right.
Nelson Mandela was.
Right.
So I experienced where I was told where I can go and what not to go. And
Apartheid. Right.
deeply in
Right.
my book, you'll see I mention how they treated
The blacks.
blacks,
Right.
how much they got doing the same jobs, what I noticed. Like in Cape Town, the biggest department store I saw there, since I live in America, remind me of Macy's or Harrods
Okay.
in Cape Town. And that store is still there.
Okay. Wow.
Durban, same thing. Port
Mm.
Elizabeth, same thing.
Okay.
Tanzania, East Africa was the same thing. And they had another history there.
So your
I
ship was able to travel from the Caribbean all the way to South Africa? Must have been a big
yes, and
ship.
back.
It must have been a big ship.
Yes, it was about 600 feet long.
Okay. All right. Okay.
A crew of maybe 150.
Wow. Wow.
And
Nice.
we did that back and forth.
Back and forth. Hmm. Okay.
Now, the other funny thing that was happening, I'm a diesel engineer. The deck people, we were carrying diamonds,
Mm.
golden diamonds from Cape Town, Durban, and Port Elizabeth, and take it to Antwerp, Belgium.
Mm.
But they used to, it was in containers, but wooden case to protect it.
Hmm.
And guess what? They would write on these things, explosive. You follow the decoy?
Yeah, they don't
To
want you
keep
going in
people
there.
from
Right.
explosive.
Right.
So one day, whilst living in America, I never knew that's what we were carrying from
Oh,
Cape
wow.
Town and Durban. But we know we always went to Antwerp, Germany.
Mhm.
That's when I saw, oh, Antwerp was the distribution point for wholesale diamonds and gold, especially from South Africa.
Yeah, right, right.
That's when I realized what I was carrying.
Yeah, well, that's actually quite smart.
It was quite smart.
Yeah,
And in
that was
those
actually quite
days,
smart. They don't want you guys getting into the product.
yeah, they
Right,
couldn't,
right,
you didn't know.
right. Okay.
But the other surprising thing, because in the limousine business in New York,
Right.
I drove a South African woman from Durban she came to a lecture in Manhattan. And guess what? She was the dean of medical school in Durban.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I said, oh my God, things have really changed in
Mm.
South Africa.
Oh,
And
she
I
was
said
black?
that, huh?
She was black?
Yeah, a black
Oh,
woman.
okay. I see where you're going. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Nelson Mandela, when he got out of prison, he changed things.
yes, yes.
Okay.
But at the time, you will see I wrote in my book, I made a correlation, an example of Australia where, what's his name? Robin's Island
Okay.
was Albatross in America.
Mm.
And in French Guiana, there's a jail where the French used to send their the prisoners to French Guiana.
Mm,
But between these countries I mentioned, Australia, Albatross, Robben Island, and who else? The Australians hit the jackpot with minerals.
mm,
And don't forget,
mhm.
the original people of Australia is the Aborigines.
Right.
So when the British realized what they got, they immediately got a lot of British to come and migrate to Australia to what it is now. And even now,
Mhm.
they don't like the idea of having blacks migrate there. You could come and study, but not stay there.
Yeah, well,
But just a year ago,
the blacks had it bad everywhere. Right.
yes,
But all right. So I know your story sounds great. But we need to move it along. I have a question here. You said that you had to escape to the sea. So why did you choose a life working at sea? What was the escape about?
right. The escape to the sea was number one, my mother and father died.
Oh.
I lived with my aunt, my uncle for a certain amount of years. I lived with my grandparents. But I think at a young age, you realize you need, how you call that? You don't belong.
Ah, okay.
So I had run away from my adopted family.
Okay. Mm.
And my first job, first opportunity I got to go to sea, I jumped at it.
Mm.
I said to myself, oh, you have a place to see. You could see the world
Mm.
and you make some money. And that was my interest in going to sea. And I take it from there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it reminds me of I read a lot of the history books about the slavers in the United States. And
Yeah.
a lot of times people ran away and went on the ships in order to find work or to unload the ships or because everybody was doing, that's how they ship goods. So there was always work on the ship. So
Yeah, Stevie does. But with me, I took it further. I got a job on my first boat because at a young age, I worked on sailboats. I had to know everything about the sailboat. I worked on schooners. I had to know everything.
mhm,
Then I finally worked on medium class boats,
mhm,
still ships, and then to big ships
mm, okay.
that
So
carry me
you became an
not
engineer,
only to the
right?
Caribbean, Central America, South America, but it took me all over Europe as long as it was a seaport, and then Africa around the Cape, all the way to into Ethiopia,
Okay.
and then across the Indian Ocean to Indonesia, to Jakarta, Java, and what's the other one? Another popular one in Indonesia, and then the Seychelles,
Okay.
Mauritius. You heard
Okay.
of that?
Right. Right.
And all these places I visited several times, not for 5 years. I've been there several times.
We're very well
And
because
Madagascar.
all right, now that's a nice place,
Yeah.
right? At least from the books that I read. Okay, awesome. So, how would you compare that fantastic life on the sea, traveling all over the world, to becoming a taxi driver? You said it was a limousine a minute ago, but I
Yeah.
have here as a taxi driver. The two worlds sounds different. How do you compare those experiences?
The two worlds sound different. But when I came to America, I was still involved with boating, boat building, and sailboats. But in the Northeast, the boating industry becomes quiet till next spring.
Mm,
And that's how I got involved with the taxi cabs, the checker cabs.
okay.
And why I say there were some similarities because in the taxi cab, it was a form of hospitality.
Mm,
I meet a lot of people from different parts in New York. You meet a lot of people in the cabin from
mm,
all parts of United States.
mm-hmm.
And I also meet a lot of different people from different parts of the world.
I got you. I got you.
You
Right.
got the similarities.
Yeah, I got the similarities. Right.
Yeah,
And it sounds like you're a people person, so that sounds great.
that's that's what I mean.
Right, right, right.
You understand? That's
Mhm.
why I said when I was sailing, I meet a lot of people.
When you're doing the taxi
When I
cab,
was
a
doing,
lot of
because a
people.
place like New York,
Mhm.
you walk any, apart from Times Square, you walk any part of New York and you stop at the crosswalk, I guarantee you will hear about five different languages spoken right next to you
Mm,
in New York City. I
yeah,
don't know
it's
about other cities.
yeah, it's a melting pot, but New
Right,
York City is the biggest melting pot, right? Yes,
right. So
yes, yes,
that's what I'm talking about.
yes. But I wanted to ask you about, you know, one of the title that I made for this our conversation today is building resilience from the sea. So how did the sea teach you resilience?
The sea teach me resilience from being a tough person by going through a lot of hurricanes.
Mm,
You understand?
yeah.
Like, because don't forget, I lived on the boat on the Hudson River
Hmm.
and I experienced a lot of hurricanes till I lost my boat. You'll see in my boat, I lost it for the last time from a hurricane.
Mm.
And most of my pictures and the first draft of my book sank with my boat, especially pictures.
Oh, wow.
A
Wow.
biggest, the biggest thing I miss, you see the present King of England right now, King Charles.
Charles, right.
I met him,
Oh,
took a
wow.
picture with he and his sister coming out from Prince, the Welsh castle in South Wales, in Cardiff. At that time, he didn't have to worry about terrorism.
Mhm.
I was shopping in the street where that main gate opened, and who came out of the car and greet the few people that was there, and I
Oh,
was one of them.
that's so beautiful.
You
Yeah.
understand? But
Mhm.
unfortunately for me, the picture I took with him at the gate, with he and his sister, I
Mhm.
lost it
When
when
you're
my
both
boat
saying,
sank.
wow.
But
Yeah,
like I said,
that's what they say.
South Wales
Yeah.
was my boat headquarters, and I shopped
Mm,
in Cardiff, South Wales.
mm. Yeah, that's what happens, a lot of times when people have fires and things like that,
Yeah, yeah,
the pictures or the memories that they can't get back, they can get
yeah.
everything else. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your boat, and we're talking about this on the heels of the hurricane in Jamaica, Hurricane Melissa.
Oh
We
yeah.
didn't talk too much
Like
about boats
I've
there.
been through hurricanes like that at sea, but in, in New York, especially in New York, I, I've went through over the 20 years on my boat many hurricanes, especially in like November, December. They
Yeah,
call it northeasters.
right.
But the one in Jamaica, Category 5, as a seaman, I have been through that at sea in the North Atlantic.
Wow.
So I understand it. But when you lose things,
Yeah.
like me, when I lost mine, it was a 2 day storm. The storm was on a Thursday night.
Mm,
And when I thought the storm was over, it came back whilst I was at work.
wow.
It came back on the Friday and I lost everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you gotta have the Mayday, Mayday rescue thing. Somebody's gotta come in.
Well, usually you are, yeah, if you're
Yeah.
at sea,
Right, right. Hmm.
because there had times in the middle of North Atlantic, I have noticed whilst we're going through major storms, I'm a big ship
Hmm.
and we have problems. I looked to my left or south, I saw a sailboat riding the storm. And I had a small boat, riding the storm.
Wow.
He
Yeah.
could write it better than me. You understand?
Right.
But
Right.
I work in the engine room. And you want to know what was our indicator for us to bail out? You know, like the big clock you have in your house, the
Right.
clock in the kitchen or in any part of your house.
Mm.
If the boat lists on the left, on the right side, and you see 20 pass, don't ask no questions if you live working in the engine room. Get yourself on the
Oh,
top.
oh wow. Well,
If you,
that's
because
great.
if you notice the clock, and all of that is during a hurricane, because during a hurricane, we are at the center of the engine paying attention to the gauges and everything.
Hmm.
So if it lifts to the left and you see it goes 25 past, get the hell out of the engine room. That was our indicator for
Hmm.
life and death of
Wow.
the ship.
Wow.
So on the right, 20 past, on the left, 22.
Mm. Hmm.
For anybody working in the engine room. And
Mm.
like I said, when we go through storms, especially when we're on duty, we are not doing any other stuff in the engine room. We all paying attention to that
Right.
because we are deep down in the engine.
Mm.
You
Wow.
got me?
Wow, wow. Yeah, well, of course, I've only seen the storms at the on the in the movies, but you've been through it. So now I
Yeah.
see why you wrote this book because you've got a lot of stories. My
Yes,
goodness.
man.
This is like history here. So
Yeah. And
I'm glad you wrote it. So tell us in your words, why did you write the book? And what do you want readers to take away from your stories that you put in the book?
why I write the book is I've always been putting together notes and pictures to write a memoir one day. But when I lost most of my memoir, my notes, maybe about 10 years ago, I lost the major thing. And when people who know me and people who have met me and they realize what I have been through, they said, why don't you write a book? And that's when I turn around and tell them, yes, I have been writing a memoir. I've been putting it together un- until I finally put it through
You put it through.
60 days ago.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
that is amazing. So your book is called The West Side Riviera,
Rivera,
right?
life aboard the 79th Street Boat Basin. Because 79th Street Boat Basin in Manhattan, people who walk on Riverside Park or drive on the West Side Highway or come down the Hudson River, they always had a curiosity about that place. You got me?
Right, right. Hmm.
And my neighbors were people like Malcolm Forbes, Forbes magazine,
Mm.
Geraldo Rivera,
Mm.
whatever you call him. Geraldo, you know who
Yeah,
I'm talking
that's what
about
I'm
so
talking
far.
about. Yes, yes, yes.
He was
Okay,
my neighbor. He had a
okay.
slip like me, my neighbor.
Hmm.
Avis Rent a Car, the owner of that company, had a boat there.
Hmm.
And the funny thing about Avis Rent a Car, I don't know if you remember when the guy who was the governor of California, what's his name again, Sonia? Um,
Schwarzenegger,
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger, right. Hmm.
You remember after he left, he was busted. He had his mistress or his one of his workers, his housekeeper. He had
Right, right,
a
right.
son.
Right, right.
Well, Avis Rent a Car, Mr. Avis. I would think top this guy. Only he didn't have children. He had a 75-foot boat in the marina.
Hmm.
Lived because everybody in the marina had a second home. And
Right.
Avis had a 75-foot boat. And when he wanted to take a break, he comes on his 75-foot boat, and guess what? He had two Colombian women on the caretaker. You understand?
Yeah, yeah, right.
In
Yeah.
other words, he have a
Get the
home.
boats.
wife and kids up ashore on
Right.
Central Park West.
Yeah.
But when he wanted to take a break from them, he comes and here is his two Colombians. Big Shaw, everything is all right with him.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Okay.
that's where I say he top Admiral Schwarzenegger.
The top Schwarzenegger, right.
Yeah,
Amazing. Well, yeah, listen, your book sounds really, really interesting.
yeah,
And yeah, you were, for somebody that's never been anywhere, you're telling stories, you're taking them in
yes,
with your words. Even, not only all around the world, but you're letting them understand New York as well. So
yes.
tell our listeners where they can pick up a copy of your book, if you have a website.
Right now, they could call it, pick up a copy of my book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Okay. All right. Yes. So I will have a short summary of our conversation today and on the show page, which is myhelps.us. And also I will link out to your book on on the blog so that, if anybody missed the name of it, I'll say it again, The Westside Riviera by Henry Bruneau, and Bruneau is spelled Bruneau because it's French.
Correct.
Yes, and yeah, definitely go pick up a copy of his book. I mean, I was very interested in our conversation today because he's got stories.
Thank you.
You're
And
very
when they
welcome.
read the book, they will notice I went deeper into what I was talking about.
Well, of
I
course.
didn't give away the book.
No, of course. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't give away the book in 30 minutes.
No, it's a 300-page book. So
Right, 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 right.
I
Yeah.
covered a lot,
Hmm. Hmm.
things they didn't think I did. I touched a lot of things.
Yes, very good.
And I give a reader the chance that, hey, if they're young, it gives them an opportunity to visit places like the Seychelles,
Yeah.
Mauritius,
Yes.
or Oslo, Norway, or South Africa.
Hmm.
You understand?
Hmm. Yeah, so that's what happens. You build curiosity for someone by your stories. That's why people write books.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that is great. Sounds like a
So
great vibe.
consider I was a runaway, but I had a motive in my runaway.
Right, 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 right. Yes, yes, yes. So very good story, Henry, and I enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.
And yeah, so all right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Author's Corner. Again, I was talking to Henry Bruneau, author of The Westside Riviera. Go pick up a copy of his book on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. And yeah, live your life vicariously through his stories. So, Henry, thanks again for being on the show. Any last words before we wrap up?
Thank you. I appreciate your interview. And I hope you look forward that you visit St. Lucia again.
Yes, yes, I have to. It's
Yeah.
actually on my bucket list because I heard it's
Okay.
very beautiful there. Yes, I
Sorry.
definitely need to go visit it. Like I said, I'm starting. I went to St. Croix. Now I got to go to St. Lucia.
Yeah. Just like St. Croix, Christian said, the capital,
Right, right.
St. Thomas, Charlotte
I
Amalia,
didn't go to
all
St.
of them I
Right.
visited.
You visited, of course. It's right
Yeah.
in the Caribbean right there, right? Okay. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.
Thank you very much.